we know that there's talk of tariffs for imported cars from China, Canada, and Mexico. And let's assume for a second that some tariffs do happen, which would ultimately raise the price to the public for new cars because the middleman buying the car is going to pay the tariff, and that tariff that he or she paid, is going to get passed on to the customer. So if there are tariffs and the cost of new cars goes up, how do you think that will impact used car prices? Would you anticipate that used car values might go up an equal amount as to what the tariffs impacted the new cars?
So we'll talk about this. I'll give my opinion on this
Yeah.
after I work out your scenario. In my opinion, I believe tariffs on cars. The demand is so bad right now. I don't think automakers can actually increase prices from where they are here. I think they're going to have to just eat the tariffs.
It's not gonna
Anyway,
happen.
yeah,
I,
I hope I don't know the scenario of what's going to happen, but I can't see these automakers selling any vehicles if they raise prices substantially higher than what they are right now. But going into that, if tariffs go into place and if it greatly increases the prices of new cars, it's going to spike the price of used cars even more because, in my opinion, that's
Mhm.
going to create an environment where it's even harder for these new car dealers to sell the vehicles that they're selling right now. And that means fewer trade-ins. And
Mhm.
just looking at the supply and demand dynamic, the only way that I'm able to get vehicles is from trade-ins from these new car dealers. So fewer vehicles sold means fewer trade-ins, means fewer vehicles at auction, means fewer vehicles for all us small used car dealers to fight over, and that pushes the prices up if we want to keep inventory on our lot. So it's an absolute setup for disaster, even more so than it actually is right now for the used car space, because the less the when velocity of money goes down through the car market, meaning the changing of hands
Mhm.
of transactions going down, then that creates supply demand on the used car side because we just have to have those trade-ins to have a healthy used car market.
So yeah, I think I heard you say you think that the used car values will spike and they'll be a little higher, which could make more. It'll definitely make it more difficult for you to be able to get your hands on $5,000 and under cars, and it could be a reversion back to during pandemic times when there was such a shortage of cars that rather than being $5,000 and below vehicles, you were selling cars that were $10,000 and below, because
Yeah.
because a typical $5,000 car suddenly became a $7,500 car. Not that it was really worth that, but because there was such a low supply, that's what caused the issue.
So I can tell you in 2021, when we hit tax time, we still had to we had to load up because tax time. If we're going to make our money
Mhm.
and we're going to have a good year, we have to hit it hard in tax time. And in 2021, there were no cheap car. Like we couldn't go to the auction and buy cars for even under like $2,000. Stuff that was being pushed through the auction was bringing $2,000. So what we had to do is we had to up what we were buying. I remember, and it made me just so sick because we would have customers come in and they'll be like, okay, well, this is our spot. Our family comes here every tax time. We get our tax checks. And okay, my cousin now needs a car. So I brought my cousin here so they can buy a $2,500 car from you. And we had to turn those people away because like, okay, well, we don't have any 2,500 cars. I got this $8,000 Hummer sitting out there on my lot if you want to buy it. And they're like, no, from our tax checks, I got $3,000. That's what I got back. And I have no more money. That's all I've got to pay for a car. That's all I can afford. And we had it wasn't a very good tax time for us that year, because we just didn't have the vehicles available. And if we get back to the point, if we have tariffs come in, and if we have prices spike on the new car level, to make demand even worse than what it is right now, then you're going to have a similar situation, where it's not production cuts from supply chains, it's production cuts and sale destruction from people just not buying. And that's even worse, I feel like, on the system, than what we had for the supply chains, because at least we saw an end to that tunnel.
Yes.
But if we are having continuous tariffs that hit for 4 years, then that's going to be a situation that the car market is going to have to live with a lot longer than what we had to deal with the supply chain effects.
And I know you're of the opinion that you think that the manufacturers will just have to eat it. And
I think they'll have to, yeah.
And I'm of the opinion that they won't, because they're already struggling. And you look at Nissan, you look at Stellantis, you look at the problems that Mercedes-Benz is having, Volkswagen's having. Their margins are thinner than they've been in years and years and years. They're bleeding money in many cases. So I can't suddenly imagine that they're just going to absorb another $3,000 to $5,000 in cost and keep the vehicles priced the same. They certainly won't be able to spend any money on marketing, or on incentives. It could get really, in my opinion, it could get really ugly.
And I 100% agree with you. I think that they're going to not want to eat. They're not going to do this out of the kindness of their heart. I think they're initially going to try to pass on the savings, the negative savings, onto their customers. But I think that they're going to find that they're not going to be able to do that. So I do think in the beginning that they are going to add the price, add the amount of the tariffs onto the price that they're getting from their consumers.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's the demand is going to be so bad that they're not going to be able to do that. They're going to have to add on more incentives to basically negate the tariffs, because people aren't buying vehicles as we speak right now. So if they increase the price by $3,000 to $5,000, they're not going to keep buying. I mean, they're not going to buy it $5,000 higher than where it is right now. So I think what you're saying is right, but I think they're going to be forced to eat these tariffs.
Either that, or they'll start to produce less expensive vehicles.
Well, they're not doing it now. I don't know what would make
but
them
they might be forced to. They might be, if the big money for them, for the manufacturers, is producing $80,000 to $90,000 vehicles, and if there's even a 10% tariff, that's $8,000 to $9,000 extra.
Right.
Suddenly, if they can produce something at $30,000 and it's only a $3,000 tariff, that becomes easier to absorb and make up for if you could sell 3 of those $35,000 vehicles for every one of those $90,000 vehicles. It's costing you $9,000. I mean, I don't know.
But
the whole thing
think about.
Go ahead.
Think about who we're talking about, though. Like, I mean, you'll be talking about Toyota. You'll be talking about all the European brands, Honda, and Nissan is the one out of this group that I think is going to have the most to sacrifice when it's coming to talk about tariffs. Now, when you go in and you talk about the big three, you talk about these American-made companies. Now, a lot of their parts are going to be from overseas, and I mean, a lot of these companies that I see this a lot in my comments. Well, a lot of these companies have plants here, so a lot of their stuff's made here. A lot of Toyota stuff's made here. It's not made here; it's assembled here, and that's not what these tariffs are going to hit. They're going to hit the stuff that's shipped from overseas to over here. And that's going to be all, I mean, not all, but a lot of your parts. And that's going to increase prices for all of these automakers, including your American-made brands.
Well, when you look at a Monroney label, a window sticker on a new vehicle, it lists the percentage of parts in that vehicle that are made in the United States and Canada. Okay. What's the highest you're going to see? 35, 40%? The rest are imported parts from somewhere else.
Yep.
So it's going to impact even those that have manufacturing facilities in the States, because if the parts that they're using to put these vehicles together aren't actually built in the States, then there's going to be a tariff on those parts. And that's ultimately what raises the price of the vehicle. It'll be a really interesting time. And I would suggest that Nissan is probably in the worst position to be able to survive something like this than any of the other major players out there, because as we know from they're in emergency mode already, and that emergency mode must have just gone like nuclear with with what they're reading about now.
All right, you might not know this, but this is a brand new channel, and you know what we need for you to do? We need you to subscribe, because if you're watching this, I can see the numbers. You're not subscribed, so just hit that button for us. It doesn't cost you a thing, and it really helps us out. So let me ask you a couple questions. Let me see if I can back end you to agreeing with me in this situation here.
Okay.
So let's go with your scenario. Okay, we got tariffs coming in, prices are going to go up. So prices go up $3,000 to $5,000 on all these vehicles that we're discussing. What then do you think happens to sales? What happens to sales when prices go up like that?
Well, I think it's going to negatively impact it. Okay. And I know that part of the argument will be, well, but interest rates will be lower. And so payments will still be relatively close to the same, whether there had been a tariff or not. But interest rates would have to drop quite a bit to compensate for a $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 price increase. And I don't, would 1% decline in interest rates be enough to offset the extra interest and everything for that $3,000 to $5,000 extra you're paying? I think it negatively impacts. Anytime you have price increases, it will negatively impact sales. What makes this week so good sales wise? I don't know. I think it's a thing called Black Friday sales. People love to save money. And when you can save people enough money, even if they don't have the money, they'll figure out a way to spend the money. And Black Friday sales wouldn't be great if suddenly somebody said, oh, by the way, that TV that we have on sale for $12.99 is now $15.99. It's not going to be as compelling at $15.99. So,
right. So we're in agreement with that. So tariffs come in, prices of vehicles go up, sales go down. So what happens to a brand like Ford? We're talking about these big body Broncos earlier. They're slowing down some production of those, but we still have tons of these sitting on dealer lots. And then you have the 2025s that come in. We have tariffs slapped on top of those. Prices are not $50,000 for one of your cheaper ones. Now they're $55,000 on those Fords. So now what do you feel like Ford has to do? Are they just going to stick to status quo with their sales that continue to go down? Or are they going to cut production on all these models? I mean, what do you think happens in that scenario? In my opinion, I think they have to lower prices.
They can to a degree through incentives, but the cost of producing it has already gone up. So does it really leave many money for the incentive to help bring the cost back down? I think ultimately it becomes lost production. I think they'll cut production so that the amount of supply will be slightly more than what demand is now. Because if demand goes down, which I would think it would. If prices go up, we think demand would go down. So if demand actually does go down, I think production ultimately has to go down, where each and every one of these manufacturers has to look in the mirror and go, we can't keep producing the number of vehicles that we had intended to, because we're not going to be able to sell those vehicles at the prices they're now going to be on the lots for. So I think ultimately you actually end up cutting production, and you kind of marry demand with supply much better than it is today.
So in that scenario, you still feel like that $50,000 Bronco is still being sold at $55,000, even though they're cutting back production. You don't think that the Ford would eat that at that point. They're gonna still have that customer that's not buying still pay that price.
I don't know. I mean, I even if you do incentives to try and keep it at $50,000, I think ultimately you still end up cutting production, because there's fewer and fewer buyers out there.
And this is what I'm talking about. So I 100% agree with that. So I feel like more incentives are going to come because demand's down, and incentives. Who eats incentives? I mean, that's Ford that's in those incentives. So this is my argument. I feel like even if the tariffs come in and prices go up, Ford still is going to have to add incentives because demand is going to go down because prices went up. So at the end of the day, I think Ford's eating the tariffs and the customer's not going to pay them.
Well, but look at it this way. Let's say the average incentive on a Ford product is $3,500. Okay. And let's say the average tariff is $3,500. So if they eat the tariff and still utilize a $3,500 incentive, it costs them $7,000 as opposed to just $3,500. Can they actually afford for it to ultimately be $7,000 as opposed to 3,500? That's a question I can't answer. I'm my suspicion would be is they can't, but I don't know that for a fact. But that's realistically what you're looking at. It's almost as if there's a tariff and you still have to do the same type of incentive, you've basically doubled the incentive, because half of it's going to the tariff and the other half is still going to the consumer. And if they can afford to do that, then damn it, they should have lowered their prices a long time ago.
I mean, that's the answer, right? What's probably going to end up happening is it's probably a little bit of both. They're going to try to hang on to their higher prices, and then they're going to blame it on tariffs. So they have to keep their prices higher. Then they're going to find that nobody's buying. So they're going to have to step in with the incentives. And at the end of the day, that means that they're going to have to eat these tariffs. And it might be that they are not able to stomach them. So then they're just stuck between a rock and a hard place where they can't sell their vehicles for the amount that they have to sell them for because there's just no buyers there. And the tariffs just make it so much harder on them.
Yeah, I just think it could get really, really ugly relatively quickly if there are major tariffs at all. It is the type of thing that could decrease demand and decrease consumer spending, which would ultimately negatively impact the economy. I believe is pretty much how that works, isn't it?
Yeah, and let's pull up this because you said something earlier, and I think this is key to everything. So does Patrick. That is key. If they can absorb the tariff, then why did they not lower the prices sooner? And that's one thing we don't actually know, and there's not a lot of information out there to know exactly how much they are producing these vehicles for. We can see overall numbers when they report their earnings and things like that, but we don't know that it doesn't cost Ford $30,000 to produce a $80,000 F-150. My research would say that their margins are not even close to that high, and they don't have a ton of wiggle room. So what's going to end up meaning is they're going to have to make cheaper products. and we're already recalling every product we put out anyway. So imagine how many recalls we're going to have with more plastic that's being put in these vehicles.
I don't know. It'll be an interesting time, to say the least. I'll be curious as to see how it plays out in automotive, or in realistically in anything, but especially automotive, because that that's been my life, and it's certainly yours. And I just it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out, how it impacts buyers, how it impacts the manufacturers, how it impacts dealerships. And how overall it impacts the economy. Because if fewer people are spending money because they no longer can afford to, that can't bode well for the overall economy. I wouldn't think. Um, but then again, as I like to say, I'm a very simple man with a very simple understanding as to how all this works. And I don't know all the technical details as to what makes an economy tick.
And I think the way that your scenario can play out is if we have the tariffs come in, prices go up, but at the same rate, we have interest rates go way down and we have the economy boom. So if you do that all at the same time, then people can spend more money on vehicles. I mean, we've seen that happen 3 years ago, right?
Yes.
That they can go in and they can pay whatever it costs for these vehicles. That's the one situation where I believe the automotive companies can take these tariffs and then pass on the savings to the consumer. That's the only situation I see, because I don't see prices going up. It doesn't work right now. It doesn't work right now.
And even if rates come down, rates aren't going to come back down to where they were before they started going up.
No.
Okay, because that was artificially below where it should have been for the longest period of time. So we're never going to get back to those type of interest rates. So where would the interest rates have to be to compensate for the cost of the tariff? I don't know what that break even point is, but I'm not sure that they're going to lower interest rates enough to get there.
I think even if they drop it to 3%, I don't think that compensates for like a $5,000 increase on a $50,000 vehicle.
Yeah, I wouldn't think it would either, but I haven't actually done it in a loan calculator to see how it impacts the payment and whether it makes up for that extra $5,000 or $4,000, whatever it is. But it'll be an interesting time to see what happens.
Yeah, and what's unfortunate is we even have to talk about how it affects the payment. Like, people just don't buy cars outright. I mean, that's
84% of people that buy cars are payment buyers. I mean, that's why salespeople always want to know what your monthly budget is. Because that's 84% of the buyers. So you got to be able to appeal to them.
Speaking of that, I want to express some frustration real quick, and let me pull it up in a form of a comment here. So somebody said, and Zach talks about this stuff all the time, and I think he gets a little bit more aggravated with it than I have let myself yet, but he's been doing it longer than me. But this person, whoever they are, says, "Let me guess, it's over." So what they're referring to is some of these titles and thumbnails or whatever that I make. And lately we've been doing a lot of the similar type of titles on like my main channel, talking about stuff shocking. And I got that from Zach because he uses the word shocking all the time.
Yeah.
And it works. It works so well. And here's the thing. We test titles and we test thumbnails with our audience. And we go with the ones that you guys pick. So no, I don't want to put "it's done" or "it's over" on every single thumbnail that I put out. And a lot of these thumbnails that we put out, we do multiple thumbnails, and one of them doesn't say "it's over" or "it's done," and that would never get picks. It's always the one that you guys click on. The one that gets clicked on is always the one that says "done." So you know what? If you stop clicking on it, I'll stop doing it, and I'm ready to stop doing it. So stop clicking on it, and there you go. That's my little rant for what I have to deal with.
I like it. It's listen, it's unfortunate, but the truth of the matter is, the National Enquirer sells because of its headlines, and YouTube videos get clicked on because of their headlines and thumbnails. And if they're not sensational, they don't get clicked on. It's
Right.
I'm sorry, but we're not doing this so that we can have the fewest number of people listen to us.
I need to try that. Alarming. That's a good
Yeah.
word. I should try that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that I can wear that out. All right. Here we go. And here's the thing too. I'm not a YouTuber. I didn't start YouTube because I wanted to be this person I am right now on YouTube. I come from a business background, and what you do in business is you find something that works and you do it over and over and over and over again until it doesn't work anymore. And then you do something else until it hits, and then you do that over and over. And so me, with my business mind and how I operate my life in general, it's hard for me to break that when I see something working and it working time and time and time again. How would I get away from that? I don't understand why any normal person would be able to get away from stuff that works over and over and over and over and over again. And obviously I'm serving my audience by doing that because they keep on coming back, right? So anyway,
For the most part,
300,000 views shouldn't lie about much.
yeah. For the most part, people like it. That's what they want.
Anyway, I just sometimes I'm human. Sometimes the comments get to me, and I'm saying it out loud now for the however many people we have here to listen to. All right. Let's get to topic 2. Yeah. All right, Ray. There are a lot of audio manufacturers that are having IU manufacturers. All right, here we go.